Hey, welcome back. So happy you're here on this Tuesday. Super excited to continue to talk about the power of conversation. Before we continue to move forward, though, about just the 1 hour conversations with a friend, this rule of life that Justin Early is encouraging us to acquire, I want to just explain how Jesus himself had this as a rule of life. I want you to just think about it in this regard. Jesus changed the world one conversation, one interaction, one person at a time. Jesus changed the world one conversation, one interaction, one person at a time. In fact, did you know that it was Jesus that influenced the freedom of slaves? That it was him that influenced the treatment of people? How? Because he says the greatest command lands on these two things. To love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul. And two, to love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus breaks culture and says, no. Anybody who's around you, anybody that you are doing life with should be loved as you love yourself. And so if there was a right, if there was something that you would do for yourself, do it unto your neighbor. Do you know that Jesus was responsible for caring and the different cultural shift of how children were cared for during his time? Yeah, Jesus scripturally said, let all the children come to me. And he said that during a time where it was common for people who were of Roman or Greek or Gentile culture to throw their babies away if they didn't meet the standards in which they wanted for them. In fact, it was such a male-dominant culture that if you had a female baby, you had a right as a man to disregard your baby because it wasn't a male and you wanted a male. That's crazy. That actually happened. And it was Jesus's influence over the early church that the early church would then go out to the city gates where these babies would be thrown away, either to be left to starve or to be a meal for a wild animal. And they would grab those babies and they would bring them back and they would care for them as their own. Did you know that it was Jesus that influenced the better treatment of women? It was. Jesus himself showed kindness and gentleness and care towards women. From one woman rubbing his feet with perfume and hair to another that he removes demons out of and allows her to follow him along in his ministry, Jesus always showed inclusion of women. Did you know that he did that during a time where women couldn't even enter the temple to worship? Jesus changed the culture he was in. One person, one conversation, one interaction at a time. And then the church that spreads like wildfire because of Jesus begins to do the same thing. Women in the home are treated with care. They're treated with respect and dignity. Children are not treated like property, but as gifts from the Lord. Slaves are not necessarily made free, but certainly brought in to have meals and can worship and can fellowship with the rest of the family. People are being cared for, access that no one among them had their needs go unmet. And Acts also describes this culture, this church, this body of believers that are flipping the world upside down. How did they do it? One interaction, one conversation, one person at a time. Today, we have hospital systems and adoption agencies and pro-life agencies, and we have an education system that's open for most people who have access to education to receive education, especially here in America. We have things today that most people would not, if they didn't know, wouldn't even realize are here because it is influenced by Jesus. The first education system was established by Christians. Electricity, Christians. Music, Christians. So much of the things we enjoy today are influenced by Jesus. And how did he do it? One person, one conversation, one interaction at a time. You see, you might feel like you can't change the world around you and that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. And that might be true, but the people in it don't have to go too. And you love Jesus. In fact, you might think you have nothing to talk about, but as it pertains to Jesus, you have everything to talk about. I want to encourage you today to just think through one conversation, one person, one interaction at a time, and not be surprised on how it flips their world upside down and begins to change the culture that we are in. That's the power of conversations. And the very thing that rose Jesus from the dead, the very spirit, the very power that got him out of that grave 3 days later is the power that resides in you. You have the strength to have the conversations you need to have. But this is how you do it. One person, one conversation, one interaction at a time. God bless.